Hello. I'm going to go through how I answer a question that I get pretty much every day on what what happens if you go to a larger injector. If it's will it be too large? Will it cause a problem? And there's two ways that I answer that question. Uh, one is based on calibrated mass airflow sensors. The other is based on actual tuning using the correct injector specs. And I'll say there too that's very important. Uh, when it's being tuned, that you buy an injector that has actual specs provided, because if you buy say an XL injector, really all I can do is use Ford Racing specs because they provide their own. Pro M provides them, and a couple others, but we try to stay with the Ford Racing. But anyway, this is it's T4M0 9495 Mustang GT calibration. It has a 19-pound injector. This is all the other specs. I'll get into those in a minute. I'll compare mass airflow transfer. If this were first I compared these to 24 pound, which is 24 pound divided by the 19. You get the 26% difference. So if this were a calibrated mass airflow sensor, what this actually does is pick a random voltage. It's the same through the whole curve, but pick a random voltage, say 3 volts. When 3 volts is reported to the computer knows that 249.03 kilograms per hour of air is being passed through the mass airflow sensor into the engine. So it can calculate a air fuel ratio. It can calculate the pulse width of the injectors to allow the correct amount of fuel to be injected, which will calculate out to I keep everything set for E10, and that would be 14.08 stoichiometric. If this were a calibrated mass airflow sensor at 3 volts, what it would do is it would tell the computer that that 184.40 kilograms per hour rather than 249 is being passed through entering into the engine, and that should allow the engine to adjust the pulse width, thinking it's got less air, it's going to inject less fuel. So it's going to treat this as if it were a 26% higher slope, so because it's getting a 26% false reading of the actual amount of air. So hopefully that balances out, and you get a good mixture. Maybe not. It doesn't always work with that setup, but that's how it's designed to work. And I'm going to compare that with J4 J1 Cobra. You can see it has 24-pound injectors. Minimum pulse width matches, and that's an important number to remember. Break point's the same. All of that's the same. Cranking pulse width, barometric pressure is the same. Cranking pulse width for engine coolant temps different. Not too bad, but different. Voltage offsets will always be different. And calibrating mass airflow sensor is not changing any of that. It's just changing what I showed you. Just mainly changing that pulse width. All the rest of it's not being changed. And something else on the Cobra, since these are tuned, set that back to the original. See, these transfers are almost identical. Ford tweaked those for some reason. I believe it was EPA related to increased mileage or lower emissions, whatever. But you can see they're almost identical. They leaned the Cobra out short a little bit. They didn't run the curve quite as high, but that works out to just a very small amount above 4% difference, which is well within what the adaptive learning can correct. So hardly any difference there. They did a lot of stuff on the Cobras. For some reason, like I say, I believe it was most all of it was EPA related to meet the standards for mile per gallon. And you can see on the fans, low speed on the GT that turns the fan on at 204. On Cobra, it waited till 212. Actually, that's off speed. It's turned it on at 208 and 216, and then on high, it both turned on at 24. So they did some things. Everything is different. They gave the Cobra a little more time, and up high they gave it less down low. A lot of things there, but I'm going to compare now to using the exact same T4M0 calibration with the only change would be the injectors, 47-pound injectors. And when you do that, when you try to run this with a calibrated mass airflow sensor, you see the break point is way off. Of course, these are going to be off because that's a difference now of 47%. Actually 147%, but that's a large difference. So all difference here. Battery voltage are off a good bit. Crank and pulse width stayed the same. And now the computer's going to have to make a huge adjustment. And that may not work too very well with your calibrated mass airflow sensor. With tuning, would do nothing more than put in the injector specs that I've just put in and leave the mass airflow sensor as the same. No reason to change that. I mean, it'll run like factory. The computer knows exactly what it's got, knows exactly how to make all the calculations. But if this were being used with a calibrated math, where one of the most important things that would work against you, besides the breakpoint being that far off, is the minimum injector pulse width, and we don't have a way to control that. We can't adjust it with a calibrated unit. It just is what it is, and it may not be low enough. It may not be able to cut that fuel enough to bring it down. Where if it's being tuned, they can just change this to 0. That makes a huge difference. So that's what if I was going to answer that question, which is like I say I always do, I would say if you're trying to use calibrated math, don't go any more different than you have to, like 19 to 24. You'll probably be okay with that. If you're trying to jump up to 47s, maybe not. But you can see the differences. That big span, the computer's going to have to do a lot of calculations. It's really going to be tough for it to get an accurate AFR out of that. So I just really don't advise it. I advise tuning it for that. Hope that answers some questions. Thanks for watching.